often I've just felt like, am I just asking these drive channels to do something that they're not designed to do? You know, why have I got the level goosed all the way up, and why am I turning the presence all the way down? Maybe I've just been using the wrong guitar.
So, this I thought was going to be my dream sort of amp. This is a 2-Rock TS1 that Chris from up the road let me borrow. However, the other day I kind of put up my honest opinions on my experience in general with sort of the Dumble clone channels. However, I think I found a little bit of a breakthrough with this stuff. And some of this is going to sound painfully obvious, but it might be something that helps some of you other guys if you've got a Dumble, or just some general ideas about dialing in these amps.
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
Normally, my process would be plug it into the amp, check out the clean tone, maybe set the volume to about 5. Then I'd probably have a little go on the tone stack, and then I'd probably set my drive to about where I think it should be. Then the moment would come, you click over to the lead channel, and I would often find, you know, playing as I do most often with a Strat, that it kind of felt like I was starving the amp of something, because getting some of the tone there, but I'd be like, well, that's not exactly the feel that I'm looking for. Stiff and sort of more fuzzy than sort of the sustaining lead tone that I'm associating with these Dumble amplifiers. So then what I would do would be to turn up the overdrive here, maybe turn down the presence, because as I'm doing that, I'm starting to notice now that the drive is getting a little bit more harsh, and it's bringing in a load of top end sort of fizzy stuff, and I'm thinking, right, I want to dial that back out. What I'm then doing is going to the power amp section, turning down the presence and closing off the amplifier. And I would say that if you're looking for the lead tone out of these amplifiers, maybe reverse the process is essentially what I'm going to advocate for here, because this has totally transformed this amp for me. It's a cascading gain stage. You might know what that means, and I thought I knew what that meant, but basically what it means is that each kind of section of the amp passes gain along. What you're doing basically is stacking the drive, and the clean channel together. So it's not actually a multi-channel amplifier in that sense. It's kind of all one thing still. The point was that actually, if you imagine like a stream, you've got a trickle, and then you just add a load of drive to that trickle. I think what I've been doing is just starving the amp essentially at the input stage with a Strat. Apparently in the Dumble, they've got this thing called an OD sort of trigger point, and this would be controlled by a trim pot on the older amps or on the actual amplifiers. So, you know, presumably this is one of those little things that Dumble would tweak, where it's like, right, if I know this person's going to be playing a Strat, which is lower output, I'm going to dial that trim accordingly. Or if I know this person is normally hitting it with a Les Paul, I'm going to dial that trim accordingly, because this trigger point totally changes the way the amp feels. I guess it's sort of like the bias of a fuzz pedal or something like that. So instead of all that other stuff, just leave your dials more or less halfway, because this is what I've actually found. Those are not the thing that is changing the feel of the amp at all. Go to your volume instead of dialing up gain here. So I've actually got the gain at halfway on the amp at this point, and it's more than enough. I always found previously that I was finding like I could turn the drive all the way up on the drive channel itself, and I wasn't getting anywhere near the feel or the amount of gain or the kind of squishy or bloomy stuff that I was looking for. Take this volume up, and what you're doing then with your Strat is that you're hitting the front end of the amp way harder, and then it's going to cascade with more energy through the rest of the amp, and it's no longer going to starve that OD section. And what I found then was that, yeah, the drive, I need way less drive on the actual lead channel. You know, sort of halfway is plenty. That's what I found. The reason I found this is because I plugged in a Les Paul, which is hitting it way harder, and it was just exactly the feel that I was looking for. 5, it's just got a way different character altogether, and I'm kind of a bit more like, well, now I totally get this thing. Maybe this is why Dumble, so I've got a friend who was friends with Mr. Dumble himself. He apparently used to say, you know, don't put pedals in front of these amps, essentially. So this is Lola Dirty Blonde. Like a much stiffer. You know, this is just in bedroom through a load box, but you can imagine. This is just much more. Add in some of the room sound. I don't know, let's just see how loud this would be.
you're thinking, potentially in this case, you might have ended up with a Dumble that was tuned for something other than your use case, which totally would make sense. So all I'd be changing to go from a Strat to a Les Paul or vice versa. The Les Paul settings, I'd have this volume at 5. Everything else stays the same. For a Strat, drop this up to 9.5, 9, and you're getting way more into that creamy kind of Dumble singing territory. Not spending the time here with the overdrive section, which actually responds really nicely when I've changed this input for the guitar. With both guitars, it kind of works perfectly, and same with the power amp and master. I can get the response that I'm looking for if I take the volume going in up to like 9.3, whereas normally I'd be kind of cranking the gain because I'm thinking, right, I need more gain. What I'm actually needing to do is hit the front end of the Cascading Gain thing, and it actually gets me much closer to what I'm looking for. That's kind of my recommendation. I think a lot of people chase various things like the Dumble ODs, trying things in the loop, and are wondering, you know, why is this such a fuzzy, in some cases dark, but also unaccommodating lead channel. I'd say that this input stage is the most important factor for ensuring that everything else along here is going to kind of respond the way you want. It depends on how you're using the amp, but this is how I would say to get the drive channel to do what you're looking for. Is kind of a lot of it is dependent on this input rather than the actual drive on the overdrive itself, or the presence, or the master. I found that actually if you get this part right, you're going to be fine. It's all about, I think, that OD trigger point, which is somewhere in the amp. I'm glad I've discovered this, at least, because hopefully it helps one or two other guys. I'm really tempted at this point to see if this is transformative with some of the cheaper Dumble clones like the VHT G50. So I don't know, leave a comment if you think that would be interesting or not.